All right, guys, welcome to the Clack Shack, and I thought I'd bring you guys along tonight. This isn't a laser video exactly, but it is. I had a person in the community last night reach out to me, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they had asked, they were wanting me to engrave on something that I had never even considered engraving. I did consider it last night, but I talked myself out of it. But what they were wanting is they recently had a family member pass away, and of course, the family member was cremated, and they have an urn that they're going to be putting the ashes of that family member in, and wanted me to engrave it with the XTool. Now, without a practice urn to test with, I did not feel comfortable in doing this, especially because I know that things that are sentimental to people, I don't like messing with them, because the monetary value alone is something that I don't really want to take responsibility for, but the sentimental value is even more than that. And so after a brief conversation and basically me refusing to do that because I just didn't feel comfortable with it, I did recommend that they go to Etsy and look for urn holders or whatnot and come up with an idea of something that they might like, because I was given a 48-hour window to complete this project for them, and they were very adamant that I do it. So I was trying to make sure it was something very, very simple, very basic, that we could get done between now and Saturday. So I came up with an idea, and they agreed to it, and I'm going to bring you along. I've got a piece of wood, and I'm going to show you what my plan is and what we're about to do, and I'm going to kind of let you kind of tag along and watch the process as this thing comes together. The 20 watt does play a role in this thing because it has an engraving that's going to go on it right in this area right here. So stick around for just a minute. I'm going to move you over, and I'm going to bring you over to the drawing board. I had a couple of followers recommend maybe bringing y'all into the action a little more, so I'm going to try that. Even though I don't have a cameraman to do it, I'm going to reset the camera and do it myself. So stick around for just a second. All right, guys, here I am with my little notebook. And this, to be honest with you, 99.9% of the jobs that I do, this is as intricate of a drawing as you will see. I've mentioned it before, and I want to reiterate, drawing is not my strong suit. That's why I have a laser. This is my urn. And this is the measurements that I was provided by the customer as far as the size of the urn. Now, the first thing for me to do was to select a piece of wood. And they wanted black walnut, but to be honest, we've had a lot of rain lately. My black walnut is stored up at my sawmill, and I'm afraid that if I use a piece of it, the moisture content is not going to be doable for this project. So I have chosen to go with a piece of the red oak, and this is actually a piece of the same wood that I used to make my tabletop here with. And I'm hoping, and it looks like it's going to be big enough to use. And so what I'm going to do is, in order to make this thing, this urn is 6.25 inches wide. So I need my material, in order for it to be behind the urn and not have the urn, just make it look tiny. I need it to be at least, I'm going to go with at least 6.5 inches. Luckily, this piece of material is almost 8.5 inches. So by the time I get it squared up, get the edges like I want them, I should still have enough material to do that, okay? Now, to try to make this thing look as neat as possible, it will be getting some routed edges. I'm going to try to see what the best looking router bit that I have to do the edges with is. And it will also, right here where the urn is going to sit, I'm going to take the 20 watt, and I'm going to make me a circle that's going to be slightly larger than this 3.68 inches. And what I want to do is I'm going to burn me a recess into this piece of wood right here, and I want to try to burn that as deep as I can so that when the urn is set into this thing, it'll keep it from sliding, and it'll also kind of help position it to make sure it stays in the center and it doesn't move. And it'll make it have a little bit more of a finished look, I think. So there'll be a recess here for the urn to sit down into. And I really only need it down probably 1/8 of an inch. That shouldn't be a problem with a 20 watt. It will generate a lot of smoke, a lot of soot, but I think we can do it even with the red oak. And the engrave is going to be up here. All right, guys, over to the table saw. And what I've got to do is in the drying process, a lot of times these knots will swell and they'll push the wood outward and cause an uneven edge. And let's face it, sometimes I get a little happy on the sawmill, push too fast, and the edges aren't really perfectly straight from the sawmill. But that's why they call it rough cut lumber, because it's a rough cut. And in order to get it to, you know, furniture grade lumber or whatever, it requires a little work on this end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to be shaving off little strips of wood until I get the edges of this thing as close to perfectly flat as I can. All right, guys, that did it. And what I'm doing and what I'm watching for when I'm doing this, in case you're not familiar, is as you push this board through there, this aluminum fence right here acts as a straight edge. And once I get this board to where, as I'm pushing it down through there, it is smoothly up against this piece of aluminum fence here, all the way through that cut, then I know that board is straight. And before you can make anything square, you got to have at least one straight edge. And so now, as far as this board goes, my straight edges are right here because I know these are parallel and I know they're straight. And so now we go over to the chop saw and we make the ends square. All right, guys, and I'm trying to save as much of this wood as I can. And to make sure that this board is square, now I'm going to be utilizing the fence on my miter saw here. And this thing is a beast of a saw. Guys, before I got this thing, I don't know what I did, because doing sawmill wood, a lot of times you're doing 14-inch boards, and I had a smaller one and it was not adequate. But what I'm doing, I'm going to make sure I'm flat up on the fence right here with the edge of this wood. I want to cut off just as much as I have to get a square edge here. So I'm basically taking the width of the blade on this end, and it's going to be a little wider back there because it's out of square that way. So let's get this done. And because this is going to be a very smoothly finished product, I'm not just plunging the saw through it, because a lot of times you can either get kickback or you can have it snatch plugs out of the wood. So I'm trying to be gentle and get that really smooth cut so that I don't have to do a whole lot of work with the sander and all that later on. And I'm going to do the same thing on this end. This end kind of goes the opposite direction. It's a little wide, it's a little thin and wide in the middle, so we're just going to square that edge up now. And so now I know I've got 4 90-degree angles on all 4 corners. I am good to go. So I've got to decide how long I want the backstop to be. And I'm thinking 14 inches would probably be plenty. But I may see how much I got before I get to this knot right here. I can actually use a little bit of that knot. I think I'll be good up to about 8.5 right here. So this is going to be the piece of wood for the base of this. I'm trying to cut that knot out because I want some good grain on this thing. Because like I said, for what it is, this is going to be with this family for a while. And I mean, I'm honored that they even asked me to do this. So I'm trying to make it look as good as I can, even though they didn't give me much notice, but I understand some things just can't be planned for. So here we go. All right, and so that gave me a fairly clean piece of wood. And it's got a little bit of checking on this side and a part of that knot, and it's got just a tiny amount of that knot on the back side. But the plan is that this board here is gonna go on top of this or behind it, one of the two. But I'm probably gonna end up going on top of it if I have enough room to try to cover up that little bit of dark wood. But regardless, that's gonna be in the back corner out of sight. So that's gonna be our base right there. All right, same principle over here. I want to try to get as much wood as I can out of this board. And it looks like I can go 17 inches and stay out of the knot. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this at 17 inches. That's actually going to be more than I need, and I may go back and trim it. But for right now, until I get everything laid out, that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut this thing off at 17. Like I said, making sure it stays against the fence so it stays square. And of course, fingers are out of the way. Safety glasses on. And there's the knot, guys. And it wouldn't be in good Clack Shack fashion if I didn't go put this in my firewood pile over here. I try to limit my waste because I did put a lot of work into this wood. And so this was a tree, and I picked it up and brought it home. So I don't want to go wasting any of it. So worst case, I use it to get my fire started. This piece of wood, and another thing that I'm going to have to work with is this piece of wood does have a little bit of discoloring right here. This was probably some bugs that got in it before the tree was cut, and it's got a little bit of decomposed wood in there. So I'm going to try to turn that around to the back and leave this cathedral grain here behind the urn, and it'll kind of flow the shape of the urn, and then that'll give me this somewhat flat grain here to use for my text, because as y'all know, the grain will affect the engrave. I kind of like the look of this wood better, but I don't know that I want to leave that on this specific build. If this was a farmhouse build, maybe, but I think I'm going to put that on the back for this. So that's going to be our canvas right there, guys. All right. So now I'm just going to kind of lay this thing out and check my measurements. What did I do? What did I do on my notebook? All right. So the reason I'm going to lay this out is because this is pretty much the only piece of wood I've got ready to go right now that is a nice piece of wood. It's not pine or poplar or something else. So I don't want to screw this guy up. So the design is going to end up kind of like this, okay? Use your imagination, guys and girls. All right. So this is where I'm going to put the. I'm going to trench out best I can with a laser. And I mean, I would do this with a router bit, but I'm not that good with router bits, especially on internal stuff that I can't see where the bit's coming out, because you'd have to do this kind of blindly or do it by hand, and I'm not that good with it. So I'm going to use the laser because I think I can get enough depth with the laser. It may take me all night, but I think I can do it. So the way that this is going together, if you notice too, I cut that knot out right there. So you've got this grain is flat, then it goes into this knot grain, and it leads up to the back of the board, and you can see there is the grain from the other side of the knot, and so it kind of radiates from that corner outward and then goes back to flat. So as far as, you know, wood grain art goes, that works for me. I like that. So that's going to be kind of the general layout of this thing. And I need 11 inches for the urn. So the urn will come to here. That's a small urn. Okay, he sent me the measurements. 11 inches for the urn, and that makes to the top of my back piece back here, that makes it 16 inches to the top. So yes, I think this is where I'm going to go, the way I want to go together with it. And it would be an easy connect too, because I don't have any joints up here on the front or anything. I could technically use some wood glue, a few Craig screws, and come in from the back and pocket those things. And it's going to be sitting wherever it's sitting and being displayed. That's going to be the back against the wall anyway. Usually this will be on a mantle. So I think that's the configuration we're going to go for. Our text will be right here above 11 inches. So what I'm going to do for that, before I put this on the laser bed and I get discombobulated and forget where I'm supposed to be putting stuff, what I like to do is I'm gonna take and I'm gonna come up, the urn is 11 inches. So I'm gonna come on up to 3 lines of text. I'm gonna come on up to 12 and a half. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make me a little faint mark right here at 12 and a half. Then I'm gonna take my square and I'm gonna put me a line right here so that when I'm framing this guy on the laser, I know exactly where my text is supposed to go. And I use these little mechanical pencils because they make tiny little lines on the wood that you can see, but yet if you don't bear down, they come off with sandpaper really well. And I haven't sanded this yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the engrave because I want this thing deep. And even with air assist, I expect some charring on this as well as this piece of wood here. So the fact that this piece is going to be married up against this piece like this, yes, this, wait a minute. And I'm also going to put me an X on the back of this just in case I forget that this is not where I want my engrave. So since these are going to be like that, I've got this entire real estate here to play with, but I want my circle to be centered in the middle of this. I want the urn to sit in the middle of this. And the measurements of the urn, as long as my measurements that I was given are correct, the entire base is 3.68. The widest point is 6.25. So 6.25 inches, it's gonna be about there to there. So what I'm gonna do is, like I said, if you take 6.5, half of that is 3 1/8. So the first thing that I need to know is where is the center of this piece of wood. And so that is what I'm gonna do. That's 8 1/16 by 8 1/2. Oh, that's gonna bother me, guys. But I need that real estate, so we're gonna let that fly. All right, so we've got 8 1/2 here. So 4 1/4 is my center on that axis. And then I've got 8 1/16 here. So that's gonna be just a fuzz over 4 there. So there's the center of my piece. That is the physical center of that piece of wood. And just so happens, you guys are gonna love this, I have a tool for that. I know that's shocking, but I have a tool for this very situation. All right, and so I'm gonna go with, since this is 3.68 inches around, that's 3 1/4. So I think I'm gonna go with a 4-inch circle as my burn. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my little tool here, get it where I can see it. And yeah, this is a laser cut tool that I made. And I'm gonna take, and I got a thumbtack, and I'm gonna take my thumbtack here and I'm gonna stick it through my tool that I have made into the wood. I'm gonna bear down on it. Now, from the center of this big hole here in is 4 inches. But if I go on the outside edge of this little hole here, then, and I push this thing in, it's gonna shave a little off of that. So I'm gonna see how big of a circle I get this way. And I'm just doing this for my own illustration and measurement purposes. The laser is gonna take this thing out for us. So I'm not having to cut it. But there I go. And that should give me close to a 3.68 inch circle. It's about 3 1/2. But that should give me more than adequate room. That's gonna be my guide when I'm framing. I'm gonna center on that. So we should be good. So I just gotta lay out the burn for this, lay out the text. I think I'm gonna do the hollow this out with the burn first. That's probably gonna take the longest. So I'm gonna skip letting y'all watch that, and I'll be back shortly once I get that done. All right, guys, I lied. I'm not gonna skip the entire burn. I will demonstrate how I'm going to get this squared up and lined up, and which it's a circle, and so circles don't necessarily require squaring. But just for the sake of training, I had some folks ask me about this, and so just for the sake of training, we're going to go over this while we're here. I'm going to be using the large squaring jig, not because I need it for this piece, because it's a circle. It really doesn't matter. As long as the circle is centered where it's supposed to be centered, it's a circle. But on the text, I will be needing my large squaring jig to make sure that my text is square, it's not running uphill or downhill, because I get one shot at this, guys. So I'm going to move this up here into my squaring jig. Just make sure that it's touching here, is not moving. So that means it is square with the X and Y of my laser. All right, and then to frame this guy out, if you don't have one, guys, I recommend it. But to frame this guy out, I'm going to take and pull my camera up, and I'm just going to drop a pin using the little map location, whatever you want to call it, on the on Lightburn. And I'm going to drop a pin right where I put that little X at, and I'm going to see if that pointer laser lines up properly. All right, very close. I need maybe 1 millimeter to the right, and then I'm going to have to go 1 millimeter down maybe. So 1 to the right, 1, 2, no, it needed like 2. So there I am. All right. So I've got it centered. I've got the laser pointed directly on the center of that circle, which I marked using the ruler. So I know that's the physical center of that circle. All right. And math's not my strong suit. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to Google 3.75 inches, because that'll be a little extra. Well, actually, let's just do 3.7, because the guy that, no, we better go a little bigger. We'll do 3.75. The guy did it with a caliber, but my luck, he didn't have it exactly right. So 3.75 inches is what he sent me. Converted to millimeters, that's going to be 95.25 millimeters. So what I need now is, in Lightburn, I'm going to build me a circle, and I'm going to set it to 95 millimeters, because that'll actually be, that's actually, should be about right for the size that I need. All right, and what I'm going to do once I get that built is I'm going to select that shape, and I'm going to use the little arrow button over here like I do on my stove covers, and I'm going to move that graphic to the laser's location. That just centered my circle on the laser. So before I go to try to cook this thing and cook it to the bone with a lot of power, what I'm going to do is I've got it set to a thin line, just enough that I can see. It's going to be running 125 speed, 60% power, and I'm going to mark my wood or score or whatever you guys like to call it, so that I can see exactly where this shape is going to fall. And it's going to be just outside the line that I drew. So that is exactly where I want it. Everything's lined up. It looks good. We're fixing to cook this bad boy now. Let it burn. So now I'm going to select my little trace line that I just did. Turn that over into a fill. Kick on some air assist. Make sure the vacuum's on so we don't trigger the smoke detector. And I'm going to set this speed for 100 speed at 100 power. I'm going to leave it at 127 on the LPI. And I'm just going to run this I'm going to run one pass at a time, just to see until I get the desired dig. So here we go, guys. This is going to generate a lot of smoke. I'm probably going to skip through some of this for y'all so this video doesn't get so lengthy, but I'll let it get started just so you can kind of see how it starts, and then I'll check back in here shortly once we've got her dug in a little bit. All right, guys, I'm going to show you why I did use decide to use the squaring jig for this. It's through with the first pass. There's a lot of soot and stuff in that burn because I'm trying to go deep, and in order to go deep, I want to make sure I get all that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that over to the air hose and get all that ash out of there. And just so somebody said they'd like to see the dust come off. So here we go. All right, so got that part cleaned up. I got all that dust out of there. I've got a little bit of a recess there. It's enough that you can tell it's there, but it's not enough for me. So we're gonna go back with this again and run another pass. And that's why I use the jig. That way I can repeat this process and be able to take the ash out of it simply by taking it out, cleaning it, placing it back inside, using the square and jig to make sure it's exactly where it was the last time I burned it. So I can consistently do multiple passes and clean in between. All right, hello guys. Hey, I apologize for the silent movie. Apparently, if you don't use the mic for a little while, it cuts off. So, you know, still fighting with my camera equipment, guys. I'm a woodworker who is trying to learn to be a videographer. So, y'all bear with me. But anyway, you saw what I did. You just didn't get to hear me talking to you, which some of you may not think that's a bad thing. But there you go, guys. That's what we're looking like so far. Just to bring you up to speed, because I didn't get to talk to you earlier, don't ever throw away all of your little rounds and stuff, because these guys make really good gauges. Like if you know, like you could go over here and hold it up to the piece of wood and go, yeah, that's what I want. And they make really good gauges for that. Instead of trying to use a compass or anything like that, or running around looking for a jar or anything, these little rounds that you cut with a laser, they're great for that. I got boxes of them over there. All right, guys, I'm back, and tonight I'm having a fight with my microphones because apparently somebody, and I'm not going to call any names, plugged the microphones up to the USB cables to charge them last time they were used, but failed to plug the USB cable into the charger in the wall. So, note to everybody, those cables do not charge unless they are plugged into the wall. So I've had to deploy a battery pack to my receiver, and I went and got my other microphone, my little dead rat. So I'm back in service now. So here we go. Sorry for the lack of audio. Like I said, that may be a blessing to some of you. But what I've done here, and I did this waiting on my stuff to charge when I realized I got like 5 battery packs up here that I could use to charge those things. So what I did here is I placed my ruler on the board because that little line that I had right there is so faint I couldn't quite make it out on the camera. And to set up my frame, and another training point here, guys, my squaring jig. I had a question asked of me today about the squaring jig. The squaring jig is not necessarily, I mean, I don't sell any files that are specifically for the squaring jig. All that thing is for is this basically, let me blow your mind, guys. Here we go. It's one of those, which is a square, made to clamp into your XTool. That's the whole purpose of it, okay? So, what you do though, is you can start a box up here at this corner and make a tool line to whatever size that you require. And you can save that once you get this file built and you've got it to where the corner of that square up there, if that's where you want your framing line is. And then you can just stretch that square bigger, or leave that one in place and use it to align another square to create your own jigs for whatever you want to create. That's just a thought if you want to do that. But I've went ahead and I've got this thing framed up where I want it. I'm having to stay off the edges a little bit because there is going to be some decorative edges put on this wood. So if you notice, I've got the machine, and I'm telling you, XTool, I actually stepped up their game with this model, because those the framing crosshairs are much more exact and much more pinpointy and precise than my 10 watt is. So that's good. I've got my frame good. The only thing that I'm concerned with is my standoff from the edge, because like I said, guys, I've got some routed edges going on this, and I don't want that to mess up my engrave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a pretty decent amount of space between my text and the edge of the wood, because I don't need this to be really, really big and really, really bold. So what I'm doing now, and this is something that you may want to pay attention to because it does come in handy. I've got a tool line, and I'm going to show you my tool line, okay? I am framing my tool line, okay? That's my tool line right there. That's showing me where my tool line is, all right? Now I'm going to go up to my cuts, and on your cuts and layers, there's a little checkbox that you can check to show the tool line or to frame the tool line. I'm going to cut that off because I don't want to frame my tool line now. I know I got my tool line where I wanted it. I used that tool line to center my graphics on my workpiece. So now I want to know physically on this wood, where's my text going to be. So I turned off the frame function for the tool line, and now I'm going to frame again. And this frame is going to show me the frame of the text itself. And it's going to show me what my standoff is, how far my text is going to come from the edge of the wood. Now, all right, guys, I do want to share with you this step that I'm doing now because I have found this very useful, especially on something like this to where I got one shot at this, and if I screw it up, there is no redo. The only possible thing that I could do is slide this thing through the planer, take about a 1/16 of an inch off of it or 1/8 of an inch off of it, and start over with a blank canvas. I prefer not to do that. So what I do, and this is my preference. You may not want to do it, and if you don't, that's fine, but I'm going to pass this on to you just in case. And what I do is I set my text to a line mode, and I run really low power, really high speed, so that it'll basically, like I said earlier, it'll just kind of score where my text is going to be so that I can burn it to the piece, and I can, like right now it is finished, and I can't show you because of the name, guys, but we'll show you what it looks like here shortly. But I can actually look at the piece. I've got my little line that I drew showing where the top of the urn is going to be and where I want to be above that. And I can look at it and make sure everything kind of flows because it is technically art to me. And make sure that the font matches, everything matches. And in this situation, I'm happy with the way that looks. And so I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to change that to a burn, and I'm going to let this thing go. The settings for the text that I'm going to be running is 100/100, which is the same thing I ran on this dig that I did on this other piece. So, and also on my Pro, when I first got it, I went back to using home 0/0 because I thought with the limit switches it would be better. But since then, I'm back to using X2, Y2 as my return to position after a burn, because even with the limit switches, I noticed there was a little bit of variation if you used home. So you may want to, think about trying that. That'll keep you kind of off those walls. And even with the limit switches, it tends to have a little bit of a bounce to it. So that's kind of my workaround. But I'm going to go ahead and fire that up and let that start burning. And we're going to move over, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and get the router out, get everything set up, and I'm going to router the edge on this piece so that as soon as this guy gets through burning, we can start putting everything together. And that's where I'm going to take that to, guys, for right now anyway, until we get the the back attached to it and everything, and start getting ready to put some color to it. The engrave on the top part looks like it's getting close to complete. I did run this 2 passes because just like this, I want the engrave to be fairly deep. Not this deep. I didn't go this deep, but I want it to be deep enough to be seen. All right, guys, after fighting with these 45s, and hindsight, I don't know that that was my best idea for this build, but I finally got it put together, and I think it turned out pretty well. I did have to 45, when I 45'd the back, I did lose a little bit of the space out the front that I had, but I still have 3.5 inches to the center of the circle. And hopefully the measurements that I was given of a 6.25 inch diameter urn are correct, because if that's the case, then I'd only need 3 1/8 inch between the center of my circle here and the back wall to hold the urn securely and it not touch the wall. And I have right at almost exactly 3.5 inches. So that should be adequate. I wanted to go for that a little bit different look, and it turned out pretty well so far. Fixing to hit it with some more sandpaper. I did have to deduct a little information from it so that we could continue the video without me giving out this guy's information. So I'll show you what the engraving looks like, but I did have to take some information out of it. But the name is about the size of the blue tape that's covering it up, and what that is that's the name, and then they wanted the 1 line of text and then the dates. And I also took out a little bit of the numbers on the dates, just like I said, privacy for these families, guys. But that's what it looks like right now. I'm fixing to slap a little stain on it, which I can't use what I normally would use because I want this thing to be ready to go. They did like the walnut, so I'm going to go with a darker stain on it, but I don't want to go too dark because I don't want to hide my text. So I'll be right back. All right, guys, there's the finished product. And I would love to show you the other side of it, but currently I haven't got a message back from the customer. I sent him a picture of it so he'd know what it looked like, and I'm waiting on to hear back from him before I share it. And if he doesn't have a problem with it, then I'll be more than glad to share it. But for now, we're going to maintain a little discretion with it there. So that's what it looks like, guys. I mean, it's a fairly simple build, but I really wasn't planning on trying to knock something like that out in one night. So as long as it can sit now and dry, we should be good. And if I get permission later to share it after I've released this video, just keep a lookout on my social part of my YouTube channel or my Facebook page. All right, guys. After this, since this build kind of brings up something that I've actually had. This is the 3rd person that's asked me to engrave something of this sort. So I'm going to throw this out there. I know a lot of you guys are trying to do engraving as a hobby, woodworking / engraving or whatever. But I've had 2 other people, and they're supposed to be going to get with me, that are wanting, they've bought boxes for the urn to go in. And they've asked me about taking those boxes and drawing up something or doing some artwork and putting it on the box. And I've actually had one person ask me about building the box. And that's something that I never really thought about when I got my laser. And I never really thought about this until this guy called me. And I just couldn't bring myself to try to engrave an urn. Now, I'm assuming this is an empty urn, but those things aren't cheap. And I really didn't want to, if it was the only one they had, you know, try to put that thing on here, something goes south, and all of a sudden, you know, they're at the service and the urn's all messed up because I screwed it up. I didn't want that, you know. I lost my dad years ago, and that would not be a pleasant memory, and nor would it be a memory, you know, of that I would want of that's the guy that, you know, messed up Dad's wedding or Dad's funeral. So just you might want to file that away. I know that's kind of a morbid use of lasers, but I mean, it seems to be more people are going that way as far as cremation goes, and that may be a market in your area. Let's face it, I mean, there's a demand for, you know, that kind of thing no matter where you live. So that might be another thing that you want to look at, and you know, it's a bit of a to me, that would be a very tedious market. That's kind of like wedding, you know, doing stuff for weddings. You really don't want to mess that up. So if you're going to get into that, please practice. You know, get it to where you can do it right. Figure out what works for you, and don't take on a job if you're not ready, and give yourself a bad reputation in your neighborhood, because that'll set you way back as far as being able to, you know, make money off of your hobby. So I know this is going to be a lengthy video. I'm going to do a lot of chopping to it to try to make it not as lengthy, but this was just a unique build. It's the very first time I've ever done anything that related to funerals, funeral services, or anything like that. And I don't hear a lot of, you know, folks in the laser world discussing this, but obviously there's a market for it, because within the past month this is the third person that's asked me a related build to, you know, cremation and funeral processions and funeral proceedings or whatnot. So it's something you might want to look at, guys. But anyway, thanks for stopping by. And the ones of you that participated with the thing last night that we did, or with Rustic Relics, I really appreciate that, guys. Those folks work hard at their store, and they treat folks right, and they support folks like you and me that are out here trying to get our side hustle on, make a little money off our products. And I messaged her today, and she's very appreciative of it. And she said, y'all are some of the coolest guys around, so I appreciate you. And if you haven't done it, then look for that video that I put out where I need your help. Just search my videos for help, the word help, and you'll find it, and go knock that out from my friends over at Rustic Relics. Me and May kind of got together and tried to give her a good surge of votes, and we're trying to bring a award to this local business in our area. So, but that's it for tonight, guys. I'm going in and resting. I hadn't planned on coming out here tonight, but like I said, this guy called me and he sounded pretty desperate to get this done, and so we got it done. So mission impossible has been achieved. So until next time, guys, be careful. Have a good day.